Just doing my thing.
You are tuned in to the voice of C38. I've opened the studio to the animals, so it's going to sound like a farm in here, I think.
Yeah, we let Brian in.
Thank you for joining us. We got a little bit of a happy vibe going on now that we can talk about the overtime shootout PK win.
Still buzzing
against LA a little bit.
Ooh.
I mean, it feels good just to kind of to know we got past LA and you know we're gonna look forward to Seattle in the next cast, so we won't talk a whole lot about Seattle in this cast. But knowing that's who we play next, I'm not as anxious and stressed as I kind of was when it came to playing LA, because I genuinely saw LA as a threat, and not to say that I don't think Seattle's a threat, but when you kind of look at LA and what they have and who they have, it's hard not to see them as cup favorites. And you know, if you watched any ESPN or ESPN FC, they would tell you that.
Yeah.
So on this cast, we're basically going to reflect on the game, talk about the game, give our thoughts on the game. We'll touch on the refs. We'll give some thoughts about that. We have to talk about Gashy's cracker of a goal and our speculation on his injuries, or injury, I suppose. The performance of Tim Howard, and is it justified now to those who thought bringing on a goalie wasn't worth it? How did Jones do? Where do we feel about as far as he and his fitness and his road to recovery? Another thing that was brought up and discussed post game, especially on the message boards, is the Puto or football chant. And how that's being perceived, because it's, some are clearly hearing Puto and feel some discontent towards that, while others are saying, no, we're saying football.
I didn't even hear that, so I'm anxious to hear what you guys are.
I heard it once. I heard it once loud.
It happened almost every time Rowe had the ball, so it's kind of... But yeah, sometimes it was louder than others, and it's definitely. I mean, it brought to my attention right away. I'm like, I thought we were against that, but
we'll roll into it later.
Yeah, Bruce Arena's reaction and what he blamed as far as the loss there. I think that every time we play LA, I enjoy Bruce Arena's reaction, especially when we win. Pablo's contract extension. Should there be one, and for how long? And then we'll talk a little bit about Jones and Howard were called up to the U.S. men's national team. Howard definitely deserves it, but there's a little bit of worry when it comes to Jones, and where do we feel on that? And Tammy's got some off the wall stuff that she'll bring up, so we'll change the topics a little bit.
Hey, everybody!
Let's get right into it. I think it was a really exciting game. The atmosphere that we were talking about, the guys around the seats, Matt and Corey was with us, so he was giving me some shit for not seeing you because you couldn't make it down. But it felt like 2010 a little bit. I can remember what it was like sitting in the stands at 2010 and watching playoffs.
It was hot as fuck in that stadium.
I didn't really notice it because honestly,
we were in the shade.
Well, you're on the other side though. The sun's not hitting you.
We actually had a cool breeze, and Tam went and got us some nice little jackets. So we
got cold.
It was chilly.
It was a little breezy.
It was awesome because it was gorgeous weather, but the sun was beating down on you for that whole 120 minutes.
But it definitely reminded me of 2010. Like I could feel it in the atmosphere. I could see it in the way the team was playing, the chances they were creating.
It felt like a tense, exciting to me.
It felt like there was more goals than just one. And obviously the one goal that went in, oh my God, man.
Dude, that's goal of the decade. Forget the year, forget the week.
That probably should be on highlight reels for a decade. I mean,
remember at the beginning of the season when we got that little bit of correspondence from the guy,
our break letter?
Yeah. And he talked about, what we can expect from Gashy, and I think we're seeing it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's exactly what we're seeing. And man, and some of
I
the
remember
goals
a
that
bunch of people calling for his head mid-season
Right.
while we defended him, and everybody's saying that he
Mhm.
wasn't worth his salt and he couldn't play and he wasn't producing. And top goal scorer has now 2 goals that probably will be on Rapids reels for
Yep.
ever.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Like we'll be seeing that goal for a long time. Now, whether we'll see it on ESPN for a long time or not, that's a different story. But we will be seeing it, especially on altitude, for a while, because that's almost Balboa bicycle kick esque.
Yep.
I mean,
You're
that's-
right. It'll be in that.
It definitely goes down as one of the top 5 all-time Rapids goals. I mean, even Matt Kanji's goal to score the cup winner. I mean, that's up there too, but not when you're almost 40 yards out and the ball starts on one side of the keeper's face and ends up hitting the post and going in. I mean, that was perfection.
That was a
Well, and the guts to take that shot, to just be like, he was left wide open in the midfield, but from 40 yards out, that's a gutsy shot.
That's what I like about Gashi. He just figures,
Like,
fuck it,
just
I'm going to
take
leave it a
it.
rip.
He knows he can score from there.
Absolutely.
And
Guy can
that's
score from
it.
anywhere.
Yeah. I mean, you could tell, obviously, by the time the ball was coming to him, he already had his mind made up to shoot.
You know who else would take that shot?
Wayne Rooney.
No. For the Rapids, though, the only other guy that would take it, Dylan Cerna.
Cerna.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah. Could you imagine what he'd be learning if he were fit enough to be on the field? So, the goal, that was great because it was right at nearing the end of the first half, and I felt like the Rapids really kind of dominated the first half. And for really what felt like the first time all season, I wasn't concerned about what was going to be said at halftime, because some of the times you guys have heard me complain that whatever Pablo says at halftime should not ever be said again. Yeah. I don't remember feeling that way this time. And I don't remember thinking that.
We had 60% possession, and LA just did not, like, all game. I think they had 1 shot on goal in 120 minutes. That's, for a team that spent the kind of money that LA has spent on that offense, for them to basically not produce. And they threw in their big cards. Gerard came in, Keane came in, McGee was in for...
Yeah, I don't remember
like,
McGee touching the ball.
Not really. I mean, the guy who touched
Donovan
the ball,
didn't do shit.
Right?
He was completely shut down. There was nothing coming out of that guy.
And the only guy who, of named quality that was really getting some touches was Ashley Cole, and it wasn't wholly a lot. And I feel like Hairston gave him a good run. Like, I don't think anyone really pushed Ashley Cole this season like Hairston did.
You know who I was surprised to see the way he was moving was Latou.
I know. He was...
That is the most active we've seen him since he got here.
And he started on the field like that.
He looked good.
Yeah, he came out guns a-blazing. Like, playoff game.
Absolutely.
I'm in this. I'm a part of this team. I'm a part of this. Like, he looked like he was actually really a part of the team.
Yeah.
He wasn't just out there still trying to fit in.
On top of Latou was Papa. Outside of his screwed up corner kick, the few times he was around the ball and touching it, he was sprinting, he was moving, he was distributing, and they took that corner kick, and I was like, you just ruined all the effort you just put in by shaking that corner kick into the side netting. But outside of that, man, he was moving, and that's something that we haven't seen from him.
Yeah,
so,
he had a little more of a spring to his step, you could tell.
Yeah, and maybe because of the atmosphere, maybe because of the situation, maybe because he knew that the way things were playing out, because I knew, but definitely by the second overtime, we were going to PKs.
Yeah.
Unless there was a moment of brilliantness, which we had the guys on the field to do it. Like, Baji was inches away from a goal a couple times.
God, that one that he turned.
Baji had a bad
quick
game.
Shot.
Yeah, and it just went wide, straight, low. Like, yeah, I mean, if Baji had gotten lucky just once, we'd be talking differently. But
I felt that he almost disappeared. Like, Van Damme really put a number on. Like, Baji just wasn't able to do what he normally does, because Van Damme was probably the best LA player on the field.
Like, no, I'd have to agree.
He was insane, and he was shutting Baji down.
At one point early in the game, I was like, we need more speed out wide. Like, it was nothing against Latou because he was working hard, but I was like, we need Marlon, because there's no way we're getting over or around Van Damme right now. Like there's just no way. Like the dude was a rock, and getting above him wasn't going to happen, and getting past him wasn't going to happen. So I felt like we needed to go wide and needed some speed up there.
He nearly carried that team on his back.
Yeah.
Like, nearly by himself. He was the only person on the field that I was like, oh my God, that guy wants it.
Yeah.
He was all over the field.
I was surprised. I guess I never realized it. I mean, I thought, he's not that big. Standing next to him afterwards, the dude is solid.
How tall is he?
He's taller than I am. Right? I mean, I'm 6'2", and he's right there, if not above.
And he's a beast. He's bulk. Like, Schuberg's like a twig.
Yeah.
Van Dam's got builded him. That man could just, he just looks like a monster.
He's a pretty solid-looking fella. Yeah. So, yeah, I was impressed with him. He played well.
And then, we finished the game off penalty shootout.
Which was insane.
God, I love seeing Dos Santos.
Yeah. It was nice to see one ball go wide, but what was better was to know, okay, we got Tim Howard. Like the guy is going to get a hand on a ball at least once. And I didn't feel that comfortable with, obviously, Rowe being the keeper. Like, okay, as long as we're on target, and I knew that Pablo was smart by putting Papa in late because then he'd be fresh, and the dude is pretty freaking accurate.
And didn't we...
Oh, my God. His PK, he kicked that ball so hard, if Rowe had been in front of it, he might have gone in the goal.
Yeah. Which, I'll hold that one.
Well, he had something against that ball because I was like, Jesus, man, that was a cannon.
Remember
from a PK spot. He didn't hesitate. Sprinted at that ball.
Didn't we talk on the last cast, or maybe the one before, like we could see Pablo using a couple subs, but saving Papa if it went to PKs? I thought we brought that up.
I think
that was
too.
Perfectly played. Whereas Arena shot his wad and then was crying about it afterwards. That MLS needs to change the rules.
And here's what's funny. So we were talking about it with a couple of people, and when it went to PKs, LA was almost celebrating like they'd won it because they had survived the on-field battle at altitude without losing. And then I was like, okay, and then of course Dos Santos shot it over, and I think that screwed up the other two guys. Like then the pressure got to them because they were losing, and I
just don't see Lorenowitz as like that killer penalty taker.
Well, it was interesting. Afterwards, Robbie Keane even said he would have shot first. But he had ended up tweaking his hamstring a little bit, so he really couldn't swing through a ball. So they pulled him out of the rotation. That wasn't me, by the way.
Like I was a little worried going to PKs because I was like, we have Howard, and yes, he's a beast. But my worry was, and they didn't show up apparently, is that LA has some really solid shooters, and they have 5 or 6 really solid shooters on the field. And I didn't feel like we had that. I felt that I was like, we pulled off 2 of our shooters in the game. So I felt that I was like, oh my God, if we go beyond like 3 or 4 shooters, I don't know if we're going to be able to win it.
That's what I was curious to see who would have come up next. And
I was so worried about that. I was like, we don't have that depth.
It wasn't a thought in my mind, to be honest. I mean, I was more watching LA and the fact that there's the one shank, and then Howard makes the next save, and I'm going just one more. As long as we make it, I didn't even care who was coming up.
Yeah,
but now the shank, that's obvious. You're in the driving seat. All you have to do is have 4 shooters that can put the ball into the net.
Right, but I wasn't worried about who was walking to the line in Burgundy. I really wasn't. Like I was more like, okay, and then so like when Papa walks up, I'm like, all right, Papa's got this.
And Latou stroked his.
And Latou, like, so, I knew with each time, like, all right, now I was watching with more intent when Howard was in the goal. And then, obviously, when he made that second save, I think I was in the air by the time the ball hit the ground. Because, and
he even guessed right on Gerard's, but he only missed him by...
just a little bit.
Yeah.
And so, when it comes to that, I remember turning around and saying to Matt, think this will shut the haters up now. and he was saying that he wished oh God, I can't remember the guy's name, but there was somebody that was just been anti-Howard the entire time and the entire season. It was just like, I hope he was here to see this because,
like one of the Rapids fan.
Yeah, someone on the Twitter end of things that
I remember that early on this.
just,
Yeah,
you know,
like,
'cause
why sign a keeper? Yeah,
and I even kind of brought like that argument to the table that as far as, is that really worth it? But after spending some time and listening to some of the people in the front office and hearing some things early on when we knew about it before we could even break, it was all right. It makes sense. It's not just the player; it's who he is and what he brings and what he represents. Like there's a lot more to it than what we're just thinking
I'd
about.
like to point out
that's
after
worth way more than
basically
$2 million.
2 months of arguing with you guys, 1-0, and we still got the win and went on in the playoffs. So it didn't involve us scoring 3 or 4 goals and having an offense that was crushing it. We just needed defense good enough and one shot on goal that went in.
Although I will
Beautiful
say,
goal.
I'm
Like
with
it's and we went to PKs, and again you have Howard.
I'm with you though.
So-
Coming up, I think they need.
It's
a road
dangerous,
goal.
but it's not impossible.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, you're right. You're right. They've
like,
shown it's not impossible.
It's no different than pushing a hard offense and then letting them score goals. Like I don't find it any more or less stressful than having a really offensive team that puts in 4 goals a game but lets in 3.
All right.
Dallas.
Seeing it, and since we're kind of talking about now the field performance part of it, and we just touched on Howard's performance, let's talk about Jones's performance. And do you guys think that him being on the field was part of the reason why the energy was the way it was, the atmosphere was the way it was, the chances that we were having, is that because Jones was back
I think
on
it's
the
him
field?
and Doyle. I think the factor of Doyle dropping back into that 10 role and allowing us to have more mobile strikers, I think that is what helped. And Jones being there because he's also kind of now offensive minded, like he pressures really hard. I think that helped. Both of them being there was solid because it wasn't a defensive team where like you have Cronin, Azira, and Powers, where it's basically 3 starting defensive midfielders. You're looking at 1.5 offensive midfielders and 1.5 defensive midfielders, which allows you a lot more mobility on the field.
And I think both those guys, they do the little things. They do the dirty work that layman fan doesn't always see because they watch the ball. And people just reading a stat line or, reading the highlights online don't see it. Those guys are the heart and soul of that team. Let's be honest. Opponents are afraid of Jones.
Yeah.
He's a freaking badass.
Yeah.
He goes in like a bat out of hell.
Exactly.
It's dangerous to have a player like that because things like 6-game suspensions happen. but like it's great.
Love you, Mark
because
Geiger.
You're afraid of it. You're afraid of a man that is willing to just give it all and throw everything at you.
You don't know what he's going to do.
Yeah, you're like, oh, I don't even know because he could literally just take me out. And he's offensive and defensive, so it's not even just one side of the field. Like he's just always on that level.
I thought he set the tone with that first run in 30 seconds in.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he carried for 40 yards?
Yeah.
Before he laid it off the bat. I mean, I thought, oh, here we go.
Yeah. I mean, and they came out kind of like I wish they would have came out in LA, but can't complain because we won. We're on to the next round. We can talk about that later.
Yeah.
It was a damn good game. It was nice to finally see. I mean, I'd love to have some more goals, and the chances were there.
I love the
finish,
OT.
But
that was really like the game was exciting. The energy in the stadium from the fan base was on level, and that was awesome. But
except the puto football.
How loud was that place, though?
I could give a shit less about that, to be honest. Like it's for me, whatever. I've heard worse things said in a Broncos stadium. It just doesn't happen to be a chant that everybody whatever. Yeah. But it's the energy in the stadium was just amazing, and then the game, like you're right. Like there was an energy on the field for that first part of the game that was awesome, like above what we normally have. But then when we went into OT, I felt we really turned it on. Like I felt that you were seeing the team that I wish we'd seen all year.
Well,
where it was we're playing defense, we're also playing offense. We weren't choosing one. We were doing both.
I think a lot of that was due to the fact that now you've got the pressure of LA scoring a road goal gone. So that's off the table. Now you could kind of really balls to the wall.
Yep.
Yeah, you're right. There was a kind of a different vibe in a good way.
And Pablo played it smart.
Now, how about the yellow team?
Oh, terrible. Oh my God, that was terrible.
You go ahead. I know how you feel.
Oh.
Yeah, I
That assistant on our side of the field, I don't know what the fuck he was watching, but
No.
he missed a couple blatant.
no. And then for Geiger to wave off an assistant for a play that he was 40 yards away from, like
Yeah.
it just, it's frustrating because I can't help but wonder if they don't really realize that they're showing a bias, whether they know that they're doing it, whether they don't care. Yeah, it's either, accidental or not, but there are teams who definitely come in sometimes, or when we go there, who get the calls. And even when the coach says post-game, the yellow team is great, probably the best player on the field, that kind of also says, yeah, because you were getting all the calls.
Well, we had, 3 or 4 yellows? I think they had one that was given late in the game.
I can't sit there and off the top of my head, I would say at least 2 were not yellows.
Well, and then all the time wasting. That was probably my biggest annoyance.
Oh,
is
Rowe
that
should have
LA
had a card in the first half for time
LA
wasting.
was literally time wasting from the moment the game started.
Yep.
And I was like, okay, I get it. They're trying to play a certain style and stall the ball. But if you just gave them like one card, even in the second half, to kind of be like, hey, stop doing this shit, it would stop. But he just kept sitting there and letting them take all the time they wanted. And I was like, dude,
Which
you
shows
keep
to the
blowing the
bias.
whistle and telling them to hurry up, and they're not even hurrying up when you do that. Show some authority, man.
Respect my authority.
Now
It's just so annoying because we had McMath got a yellow for time wasting early in the season for what wasn't even that much time wasting, and then you see games like this where they spent the whole game doing that and nothing.
All right, so
Like,
Brian,
be consistent.
yeah, you were in the locker room afterwards. What was the atmosphere like?
Actually, I was
Or in
not
the press conference.
I was in enemy
area?
territory the whole time.
Uh-oh.
So yeah,
What was the atmosphere like?
Did you wash that stink off?
I felt dirty afterwards. No, honestly, I was really surprised. I can't believe I'm saying this, at how willing Bruce was to talk. In fact, his PR guy said, okay, guys, we're going to take 2 more questions. And Bruce is like, no, I'll answer as many as they have. And I just about hit the floor. Now, that being said, now the players out of the locker room, though, were real. Everything was just like this, and then quiet and down. Guys were. But Donovan was real, gracious and losing. Keene was. Rowe was a stand-up dude. He was the first guy to come out and talk to us. So class acts, I'll give him that.
What about Stevie G?
Stevie G was not made available to the media. Yeah.
We gave Gashi his jersey signed and everything. I thought that was pretty cool. So I was hoping you guys might have heard from him.
Yeah, because one of the equipment guys had brought it over to the locker room to have it signed by him. So I just noticed him standing there for a while, but that's all I ever saw of it. But Bruce was, he was a pretty fair loser. I was surprised. Other than the fact that he bemoans the altitude and thinks MLS needs to change the rules of the game for Denver and Salt Lake City. Oh, did you not read my article, mister?
I haven't gotten a chance to do that yet.
Quite all right. Basically, in a nutshell, he thinks when games are played at altitude, there needs to be an extra substitution just for that game, for game. So basically, here in Salt Lake City, needs to be extra substitution, possibly timeouts, things like that, because it's not fair.
Yeah, but you could say that about hot conditions or.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
Well,
Absolutely.
they do with hot conditions. They have the water breaks if the temperature's
I
at a
just feel
certain.
there's a lot of like with OT. I've always thought you should get an extra sub, because I feel like when you're playing a whole extra nearly half, that you should allow a team to have another sub,
Right.
for that. But because of altitude, that doesn't. Yeah, it's difficult to play at altitude, and you get more tired. But
He's
it's
lucky it wasn't
no different
snowing.
than us having to play in different conditions or
Yeah.
playing on turf.
Well, that's the other. Like, there's a
Works-
comment
Yeah.
he makes in here that he goes, "I think teams that play on altitude or artificial turf have a slight advantage in this league, and I think that they should take that to heart." And they took that to heart. They're a solid team. They're not the greatest attacking team, but they defend well and take advantage of the home field with the altitude. So, you've heard players and other teams, some just brush it off and say, no, altitude isn't that big of a deal.
Yeah.
You come an extra day, you
Yep.
train a little bit, you get acclimated.
Yep.
There are devices and things that you can use that help you train like you're training at altitude. Jermaine Jones did it in LA. So there are things and preparations and ways that teams can go about playing at altitude aside from making it an excuse in a post game when you lose.
And think about LA. Can we get an extra yellow card just thrown at LA because they always have the refs in their pocket? Like,
Because the air quality.
there's a lot of things that we don't get being a smaller market team that they get by being a larger market team. Like, when you start nitpicking at things like altitude, that like turf, I find a bigger deal than altitude.
Yeah, I agree.
Turf makes me nuts. I think turf should not be allowed in professional soccer. It's just a terrible. If you've ever played on it, it's terrible.
It's
terrible
it's
on
not
the
fun
body.
to play on,
It's-
and it
especially in the
And
definitely.
the
summer.
ball just moves differently. It's just a terrible thing. Even people that their home field is turf think turf is bad.
Every stadium's got its own idiosyncrasies. I mean, that's the thing. You can make allowances for cross country trips. Oh, I should have an extra substitution because I had to fly from LA to New York. I mean, there's always going to be something. Just enough. Play the game, and he did. He was stand up guy and taking the loss. He goes. He even said one of his quotes was, "You know what? We get the game to penalty kicks and lose in penalty kicks. We got nobody to blame but ourselves."
Especially to lose how terribly they did in penalty kicks.
Yeah, although he did kind of throw. He didn't really throw him under the bus, but
Rowe.
he
He did. Kind
made a
because
comment.
he said maybe our keeper's not as tactical or as
Yeah.
experienced, and maybe if we had one, that maybe things would be different. So he backed the
I
bus up on
agree.
Rowe a little bit.
When I heard that, I
But-
kind of went,
I like when you're when you're in a keeper in that, it's what normally a 50-50 shot that you're going to even guess right
"Yeah, if
and
even."
then stop it. So you're looking at probably a 40% chance that you're actually going to stop a ball. He didn't stop any, but that's the factor that Howard is on that level
Yeah, exactly.
is what made the difference. It's not that Rowe didn't do a good job. Rowe did what most keepers do.
Yep,
Howard's just that good.
Yep.
and he's that much of a presence that Dos Santos got the yips.
Right. I mean,
Like, for him to guess right on every single one of those PKs, there's not many goalkeepers in the world that could do that.
Everyone, even on Dos Santos, he was there down low.
Dos Santos and Gerard,
Yep, he was there for every one of them.
guessed on every single one correctly, and that is just a talent. And there are very few keepers that have it.
this is true, and that is Tim Howard. Tammy, what do you got to? We'll change it up a little bit.
Look alive over there.
I know. Well, there's two Timbers that got themselves in a little trouble on Monday.
Wah, wah.
I don't know if you guys have read, but
No.
goalkeeper Jake Gleason crashed his
Oh,
BMW.
who's the keeper?
And then he called his buddy, Liam Ridgewell, and they both got arrested for DUIs. So that's
so
what they're up
Ridgewell-
to since they're not
Ridgewell
playing
rolls up.
anymore.
Ridgewell rolls up to pick up his buddy
Yeah.
with booze on his breath.
And then he gets caught as well. Isn't that crazy?
They not have any Doritos or Altoids that can cover that shit up with.
You go from championship team to not making the playoffs the
I
next
know,
year.
it's kind of sad.
Yeah,
They
really.
probably were just drinking the season away.
Drinking.
Drowning their sorrows,
Yeah.
looking for songs in a bottle.
And Gashi, he's in the semifinals for the goal of the year. So go vote
The
for
only
him.
vote that matters.
Yep.
Yeah, he's
And
killing
then if he makes it, which he is 70% right now, because I just went and
he's-
voted.
It's not even close.
And then you vote one more time, and hopefully he'll win. So go vote.
I mean, let's be honest.
Colorado
He's gonna win.
Rapids.
I mean, if that's not goal of the year, too bad they couldn't bring up the goal he just scored, because
I
that
wonder-
should be goal of the year.
I wonder if that's where some of his votes are coming from. People go, dang, that guy just does it more than once.
Right. He's not
Click.
just a cracker who gets one lucky.
Well,
free
and I
kick.
guarantee you Seattle's going to be on him tighter than LA, because LA kind of left him pretty open and at that mark a couple of times. He didn't take the shot, but there was a few times where he seemed to be pretty open in that midfield, and I was like,
Well, then
you're
that
leaving
opens up
Gashi
Doyle or
open?
Jones.
Or somebody on the side.
But
that's the thing.
I don't know why you would do that. He wouldn't be the player I'd leave open there.
Gashi
I might
drifts.
leave Doyle open there.
So
he
he's
just
going to
he
take someone with
meanders,
him.
you
Yeah.
know.
What else?
Oh, and then Tim Howard,
Who?
player of the match for that game, which obviously is not shocking.
I found it funny though that they announced it like way after half the stadium
After
left.
people left.
Oh, did they really?
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm on Matt's conspiracy theory train a little bit on the Howard thing of it, but
did they do an
Yeah.
OR presentation for that?
no.
Because they're done with that, right?
Yeah.
We only did OR presentations for the season.
For the regular season.
So Howard
might
could be
have
man
to
of the match
wait-
the rest of the year. It won't be this year.
He
recalculate
might-
next year,
he
because
might
we
be
only did enough
every-
ORs.
Which is fine. I mean, if
Give
he's
it to
man
him.
of the match every game, that means we keep
That means
doing
it's been
well.
a shutout.
Yeah. So, what else?
And really, you guys are going to talk about it, is we have 4 players that are called up.
Well, I was going to bring up the U.S. men's national team. That's 2. So
Oh.
who are the other 2?
Well, I forgot who you brought up, but Jermaine Jones and Howard
Yeah.
will
Yeah.
be playing for the U.S.
That's it.
Azir is going to be playing
4. You know who he plays for?
Uganda.
Very
There you
good.
go.
Yes. And
Against-
I'm not reading, folks. This is just me chatting.
She's off the cuff.
And Doyle.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which
Kev
team is
Doyle.
Doyle playing for?
Wait, stop it. I'm actually annoyed that Jones is going, because I don't want him to get hurt before we have to win. So I don't think that's a fair poll.
That was, one of the other things that I was going to touch on and talk about, and kind of maybe how we close this cast out a little, because, since
And
We
we
are
still got
in-
Pablo to talk about.
that's true. We are in a little bit of a break. We take an international break.
Are we taking an international break?
We are not.
Okay.
We're
Just
we'll
checking.
be
Take
back
breaks.
next week or whatever. We'll
Unless
take
you're
a-
Brian, who like 3 out of the 4 weeks is always on.
Well,
break.
we'll talk about my schedule later off the air.
or if you're like me, after a few drinks, it's pee break.
Yeah.
But
TMI.
since there's some time between games, it's because of international duty. I kind of feel the way Tammy does when it comes to the Jones call up. I understand what it means to be called up, especially for a World Cup qualifier. But
Especially to him.
the club, the fan in me, the Rapids fan in me, just doesn't want
The paranoid Rapids
right,
fan.
just
Yeah.
doesn't want
I know it.
Jones to get doiled.
Yep.
It
And
just sucks that we've got it's in the middle of our playoffs.
Yeah.
That this
Right.
international break
Right.
happening. That's the problem.
Although, you know what?
and that's how I feel about it. Like if this was
It's like, damn it.
But then again, that's this is kind of, if I look at it, if it was earlier in the season, kind of like around the July time when he went, still I felt that I didn't feel the same way. I was like, yeah, he's there, he's cool, he's repping it, and then you hear things about the injury, and it may have kind of been started there
Oh, yeah.
instead of here at Portland. But either way, with the way the Rapids have been playing, we've needed Jones all season long.
You can tell a difference.
And so, under any circumstance, no matter what time of the season, I think I would feel this way if he was being called up when he's not 100%. And, of course, the team is in a situation where we're in the playoffs now. So, losing Jones again really kind of is a key thing for us, because I just don't know if the team has that final mentality and ability to win the cup and go all the way without Jones.
Are you
Especially
jinxing
if
us?
you're going to
right
be
now?
missing Gash in at least the first leg.
Well, and that's just the
Possibly.
Like, that's dangerous for me. Like, I'm like, Gashi,
More to
even if it's
follow.
a minor injury, throwing him out on turf, for me, isn't worth it.
Right.
Like,
and-
if it's just a small ding or whatever, it's a bruise, go ahead. But if he actually tweaked the tendon or anything, you leave him off or you put him on for 10 minutes in Seattle.
Who are we talking about, Jones?
I said Gash.
Gashy's there's no tendon. It's an ankle sprain. A severe
It's an
ankle sprain is kind of what was being said by some of the professionals. But we can look at this break and say, okay, he can have this time to recover. We can hope that maybe the crutches were kind of helping the situation game time wise and making it look the way it needed to with the refs and the game and everything else. And then hopefully Gashy, he this isn't, I don't mean it bad, but if we had a flopper, it would have been Gashy.
Yeah.
Like, there's been times this season where I'm like, get up, dude. You're not that hurt. I know you're trying to sell the foul and so on.
Yeah.
So I briefly felt that way when I saw him on the ground because he originally grabbed his hamstring. So
Yeah.
there was
After a hard tackle that
Right.
he applied.
and his foot stopped. Like, I saw his foot stop in the ground, and that's really, I think, what sprained the ankle. So it wasn't necessarily the tackle or anything like that. So we can't say it was bad reffing in that case. But I
Love
do
you, Mark.
hope
We love you, Mark Eichel.
I do hope that Gashy's not as hurt as it looked on Sunday, just because he could recover well enough
Yeah.
to play in 2 weeks, because we can't be without both Jones and Gashy, that's for sure.
And was it his
And
right
that's
foot?
my bigger worry with Jones getting pulled
I
up
think it
is
was-
that I like.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
But the problem is,
Probably
do you
plant-
again Jones on turf? If he's still not 100%, do you do that, or do
Now-
you go? Okay, let's go into Seattle like we did LA.
Mm,
Try and play defensive and come out better off than Dallas did, and then try and use once again our dominance at home.
Well, we'll have to
We'll get that-
think on that. We'll
Yeah.
chat about that next week as we look into Seattle. But there are a lot of things. I mean, even Marco Papa, the dude played a handful of games in that stadium on that turf.
Bingo.
He could be a vital asset to us come next Tuesday,
I would be surprised to see that be your starter over Gashy in that spot.
especially, if Gashy's not right, or if it's one of those things where we feel, hey, we need to save Gashy for home and try to, 0-0 here or 1-0. Same thing with LA. So
And again, we'll get to it next week, but I think we need a road goal in this series.
can't argue that.
Anyway.
You know how I feel about them goals. So other than that, we got the
Howard
Pablo.
getting start.
10 goals in both 10 goals.
Oh, we want to go over to Pablo.
Yeah. We could do some Pablo chat because that's it's
Is that our new
It's
segment, Pablo,
Pablo
Chat?
chat because there's always something that's got to make us talk a little.
Well, you need to
Pablo.
have a mentality.
And I feel it's
buy-in.
important at this point.
Right. So
Feel the Pablo discussion in the playoffs. Each game, it's going to matter how he coaches that, because this is where I'm like, okay, he coached the season to put us in a position where we're at now. We have home field advantage through the playoffs, all the way through them, since Dallas lost. And you can say it all you want that, we were doing that well despite Pablo, but he still coached a defense that was the best in history at home, and one of the best probably in history over an entire season. And it's with non-all-star players.
So are you convinced by now that he deserves a contract extension?
Oh, I was convinced midway through this season that he deserved at least a year extension with what he'd been doing. Now it's a debate whether you give him a 2-year extension or not, and I'm borderline on that. I feel that he's definitely earned the 1-year extension. I felt he earned that as soon as he basically got us a playoff spot. For me, I was like, okay, you made it into a playoff spot. That in itself for me earns you a 1-year extension.
So what would
in
be
the-
what would warrant a 2-year extension in your mind?
I am almost there. I feel that he did a great job at coaching in this last game. His substitution was above Bruce Arena. He out-strategized Bruce in both atmospheres. In my opinion, a 1-0 game in LA isn't terrible. It's not a terrible outcome. For a team that's that offensive dominating, not that terrible outcome, especially since they had the second best defense in the league. Did you really expect to go score a goal with our, lackluster offense? But we held them to one. So that's huge for us in LA. And then to come here and him to play it smart enough where we make it into OT and then we make it into PKs and we look like the dominating team. LA never looked like they were in that game.
So would the next series determine your vote?
Yeah, if he pulled out the next series and wins it, he probably deserves a 2-year. I think that at that point you've now made it to the Cup, win or lose in the Cup, because the Cup is a difficult game to play. Granted, it's going to be here if we win, so that gives us an advantage, but it's still, you never know what's going to happen. We won on a fluke goal off of a guy breaking his leg.
Yeah.
And when we won it in 2010. So, championship games are just different on a whole different level that it's really hard to even say a coach is out coaching another coach. Championship games have a lot to do with the players, the energy, how they can handle the pressure, and it has a little bit less to do on coaching. I think the rest of the playoffs has a lot more to do with coaching. You really have to figure out, how do I do this, especially with the home and away games? Instead of it being just one game in a playoff round, you're playing 2 games in a playoff round. Figuring out how to do that and come out with wins is a difficult task.
Brian, where do you stand? Does Pablo deserve an extension? And if so, what would be your vote?
Hell yeah. As many years as they can afford him. For a couple of reasons. I look at the ability of the coach a little bit different. I look at him through the week and not so much at the match. Because really, in my opinion, the match is, he's out of the equation. It's during the week when he and Spenny and Cookie and Sharpie can actually have an effect. And those guys this year have coached their rears off. And the fact that he's gotten, that's his time frame when he's gotten this team to, here's a Pabloism, buy in, and everybody believe in the same direction and the same message. Dude, that's no easy feat. Look at how many guys are on that roster, and there is, no kidding, not one dissenting opinion. Which in a professional locker room, how many times do you see that?
Never, especially with you've got personalities,
right?
Joe, Papa,
big personalities.
Howard's probably got quite a bit of personality in himself too. These are high level players, and that to me speaks more volume than he made this sub or that sub. So and I really believe the front office staff of Bravo and Porg and Tim, that's what they look at. They just can't say as much out in the public right now. And then the other thing is, if the Rapids don't re-sign Pablo, let's be honest, he's a finalist for Coach of the Year, could very well win it. If he doesn't re-sign here, the success he's had this season, somebody's going to pick him up. And it's going to be in this league because there's going to be some coaches, moving on. If not next season, for sure the year after. So it'll be back to get us. So yeah, absolutely, I think so. You don't give him a lifetime deal, but I don't think he would expect that. He's been in this game long enough.
2 years, 3 years,
at least, yeah.
Yeah,
for sure.
I have to agree with Brian on that. He might have persuaded me to go 2 years already. I'm still on the fence, but you give him 2 years and then you give him an option for a third year.
Yeah.
And see how it does.
Yeah. Because he's developed
really
the system now.
The success he's had, whether we brought in great players or not, you can tank with great players.
Just ask LA.
Mm-hmm. We'll ask a lot of teams that didn't make it.
Right.
Ask LA. Ask either New York team.
Yeah.
Oh, God. Speaking of stinkers. Ooh.
Tam, what do you think? Being on the outside a little bit, just kind of hearing what we've been saying all year.
Have you been listening at all?
Yes.
Okay.
Does Pablo deserve an extension?
I would say so. It always takes a few years. How long has he been there? 4?
This is 3.
3?
This is
I would say you need
As a coach.
right. But I mean, you guys do talk about him not subbing in and playing favoritism, and if that doesn't get better, then you're gonna get frustrated in a couple years and want him out anyway.
Well, I don't think that any coach is perfect, and we're always going to probably find something to nitpick. But Brian does bring up a really good point as far as the cohesion in the locker room, because no matter what, even though Pablo says he's made it a players-led locker room, that's because the manager chose to make it a players-led locker room, and he did the things that he needed to do, and he's saying the things that he needs to say in order for those players to stick together. And you're right. That's kind of what makes a manager, a coach, a coach. And
there's a difference
in any sport. You can even talk throw ball and how certain coaches can't keep a locker room full of personalities together, and that's why a team who you would think on paper would be out there kicking people's asses aren't. And you've got a team like the Rapids where on paper you'd think they're kind of mediocrity. There's a third place finish in them in the league.
Yeah.
They might make it as far as they've made it in the playoffs based on kind of things that they've made. There's still going to be some people writing us off because they just don't quite understand the chemistry and the fight that this team has, that Pablo is behind all of it.
Which is good.
I'm excited about next year right now because for me, Pablo sold these players, Jones, Doyle. Well, Doyle was last year, but Jones and Howard to come here.
Gosh,
he had to sell them to get him here. Now imagine if next year he's negotiating with players and we win a cup. And a man that could sell a team that was damn near dead last year brought in the talent he did and sold them on this team. Now imagine him going out and being like, look what we did. What? And being able to already sell. Like,
it would be more look what you'll be a part of.
Yeah.
Be insane.
Look what we can do together.
Yeah.
Well, who gives him the thumbs up with the money? Isn't that?
Well, that's
Cronky,
well, Poreg does the money and the finances and stuff, so they can sit there and say, or he can sit there and say, this is what we have to spend.
Yeah.
Josh Kroenke is the one who says, okay,
he signs checks.
This is what I'm willing to.
So
dump
that
into
was
the
kind
club.
of like a group effort to shell out
Oh,
the
absolutely.
money to let him to kind of
Yeah,
do.
it
let him do it.
It starts at Josh Kroenke, then it goes to Padraig Smith and Tim Hinchy, and then it kind of trickles down from there. Pablo can make suggestions on who he may want as a player, but we all know it's Padraig. We all know he's the one who's doing the research and the scouting and finding these types of players that will fit into the system that they want to have.
Let's be honest, he's already got a list for next year.
Right. We know that he's already working on players for next year, despite how we do in the playoffs.
Yeah, it makes no difference.
Even though we haven't finished and our season objectives are changing weekly, that doesn't mean that Padraig's already got a season objective for next year. Like if we made playoffs this year and we did what we did this year, he's setting the bar at this year's results. They won't tolerate not making the playoffs next year. They won't tolerate being in the top 3 in the league. Like we'll hear coming out of the front office what they're expecting next year, and it's
they want a dynasty.
Yep.
This is an organization that showed this year, and we've interviewed multiple people from the staff about it. They want a dynasty. They want a team that's going to continue to be good years to come. They're tired of being a bottom of the table, low market team, and they showed it this year by spending the money.
And I think you need that continuity at the top in order to do that, and top being your head coach.
Yeah, I think that Pablo has earned himself an extension, and I think that the club doesn't want to move forward without him. No. I think at this point, they were so invested and so stubborn not to get rid of him when many people thought they should have.
Oh yeah, look at how many other
you don't give up
organizations
on him now.
would have dumped him before this year.
Right.
He would have never gotten this chance.
Yeah. So, yeah, we don't want to get rid of him now. Not when his price tag has gone so high. So,
Yeah,
there are
it's
sometimes you want to get rid of someone when their price tag is almost as high as it can get. You don't want to do that with a coach. You can do that with a player because you can replace him.
And
a lot
imagine
easier.
the pay
Yeah,
increase he's going to get because negotiations, I can guarantee you, are probably already in discussions for next year.
I'm thinking nobody's happier than his agent right now.
Right.
So he's probably going, look,
Yep.
don't get me cheap anymore.
Nope.
How do we want to close this out, man?
Enjoy the win.
Enjoy the win.
Savor it for 2 weeks.
We've got a couple weeks off. Of course, we'll still be casting and have to fill with a bunch more bullshit.
I think we'll have a lot to talk about next week. I mean,
Yeah,
Facing
hoping
Seattle
to hear
is-
some injury reports, some
Yeah,
more
we'll know
information about what's
exactly.
kind of going on.
That's why I'm
Gashi
holding off on a
and
lot of it.
Morris. I'm interested to see how Jordan's doing because that could help us.
Yep. Yep.
Uh,
It's definitely
so
something
that'll
we'll
all
be keeping an eye on.
That'll be all important. We'll have, of course, the U.S. game we can always discuss after the fact
Right.
against USA, Mexico, and that kind of thing.
Don't forget the
So,
first
outside
leg
of that,
is on a Tuesday night,
Yeah. So the first game is the
It's
22nd.
terrible.
which is weird.
you can blame Seattle.
Thank
It's
you,
all
Seahawks.
Seattle's fault.
Yep. They should have never won. Dang it.
Why
No,
didn't
I'd
they move
rather
it to a
Seattle
Saturday?
win.
Is what I don't get.
College
Why
football.
didn't they go?
Yeah, University of
College-
Washington plays in that same stadium, I think.
Yeah.
Jesus. Okay, I'm sorry. Seattle.
Yeah, so
I really
MLS
don't
took
care.
a third
You
seat
stay-
to college
you saw
football
it
and
at the stadium.
NFL.
Yep.
Get your own stadium. You guys sell that thing out all the time. Build a new stadium.
They've got a nice training ground. Maybe we could have played there.
Right.
You just stand around the fence.
30,000 people standing outside around the fence.
It's pretty nice, actually. Sit in the trees.
I'm excited for the rest of the week because I'm going to go see my favorite band, Nonpoint, play on Thursday. So if you're bored, I'll be at Summit Music Hall at 7 on Thursday. Being obnoxious and loud.
I was going to say, the drunken monk will be full in effect.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes.
So, okay, we will catch you guys next week.
Aloha.